The sun was dipping low over the quiet streets of Oak Ridge, a small town where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. The air carried the faint hum of cicadas, and the golden light cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Main Street. It was just another Tuesday evening, the kind where nothing much happened, until the flashing red and blue lights of a police cruiser sliced through the calm. In the driver's seat of a modest black sedan sat Marcus Hayes, a lanky 17-year-old with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a pair of earbuds dangling from his neck. His dark skin glistened faintly under the streetlights, and his eyes, sharp and observant, flicked to the rearview mirror as the cruiser pulled up behind him. Marcus wasn't speeding. He wasn't swerving. He'd signaled every turn like his mom taught him when he got his learner's permit 6 months ago. But there it was, the unmistakable wail of a siren, short and sharp, demanding he pull over. Marcus eased the car to the side of the road, his hands steady on the wheel. He'd been through this before. Not here, not in Oak Ridge, but back in the city where he'd grown up before his family moved. He knew the drill, hands at 10 and 2, no sudden movements, keep your voice calm. His heart thudded, but he wasn't scared, not yet. Mostly, he was tired. Tired of the looks, the assumptions, the way people's eyes lingered a little too long when he walked into a store or crossed the street. He glanced at the glove compartment where his registration and insurance sat, neatly folded, ready to prove he belonged. But something told him this wasn't about paperwork. The officer stepped out of the cruiser, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. He was a broad man, mid-40s, with a buzz cut and a jaw that looked like it was carved from stone. His name tag read, Officer Randall, and his hand rested casually on the holster at his hip as he approached Marcus's window. The way he moved, slow, deliberate, like a predator sizing up its prey, sent a ripple of unease through Marcus. He rolled down the window, letting the warm evening air flood the car, and met Randall's gaze with a polite nod. "Evening, officer," Marcus said, his voice steady but soft. "Is there a problem?" Randall didn't answer right away. He tilted his head, squinting at Marcus like he was trying to place him. His eyes flicked over the car, the backpack, the earbuds, and finally settled on Marcus's face. "You're not from around here, are you, kid?" he said, his tone clipped, like he'd already made up his mind about something. Marcus's grip on the wheel tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. "I live here, sir. Moved to Oak Ridge a few months ago." Randall smirked, a thin, humorless curve of his lips. "That so? Where you headed in such a hurry?" "Just home from school," Marcus said, nodding toward the backpack. "Got some homework to finish." The officer leaned closer, his shadow falling over Marcus like a storm cloud. "Homework, huh? Mind stepping out of the vehicle for me?" Marcus's stomach twisted. He wanted to ask why, to demand a reason, but he knew better. He'd seen enough videos, heard enough stories. "You didn't argue." "Not here, not now." He nodded, unbuckled his seatbelt, and stepped out onto the gravel, his sneakers scuffing softly. The street was quiet, save for the distant bark of a dog and the low rumble of a passing truck. No one stopped. No one watched. It was just Marcus and Officer Randall, standing under the fading light, with something heavy hanging in the air between them. Marcus stood by the side of the road, his hands at his sides, shoulders squared despite the weight of Officer Randall's stare. The gravel crunched under his sneakers as he shifted his weight, trying to stay calm while the cicadas droned on in the distance. The evening air felt thicker now, charged with something unspoken. Randall circled the sedan like a hawk, his flashlight beam darting over the car's interior, lingering on the backpack, the empty coffee cup in the center console, the neatly folded jacket in the back seat. Marcus watched, his jaw tight, knowing there was nothing to find. He'd made sure of that. His mom had drilled it into him, keep the car clean, no loose ends, nothing that could be twisted into an excuse. But the way Randall moved, the way his lips curled into that faint, smug grin, told Marcus this wasn't about the car. "You got any ID on you?" Randall asked, his voice sharp, like he was testing Marcus, waiting for him to slip up. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, reaching slowly for his wallet in his back pocket. He held it up, letting Randall see every move, then pulled out his driver's license and handed it over. The officer snatched it, his eyes scanning the card before flicking back to Marcus's face, as if he didn't trust the name or the photo staring back at him. "Marcus Hayes," Randall read aloud, drawing out the syllables like they tasted sour. He tilted his head, squinting. "Hayes. That name's supposed to mean something around here." Marcus shrugged, keeping his tone even. "Just my name, sir." Randall snorted, tossing the license back like it was a piece of trash. Marcus caught it before it hit the ground, his fingers closing around the plastic with a quiet snap. The officer stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell the faint tang of coffee on his breath. "You know why I pulled you over, kid?" Randall asked, his voice low, almost a growl. "No, sir," Marcus said, meeting his gaze. His heart was pounding now, but he refused to look away. He'd done nothing wrong. He knew that. But he also knew it didn't always matter. "Your taillight's out," Randall said, jerking his thumb toward the back of the sedan. "That's a safety violation. Could get you a ticket. Or worse." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd checked the car that morning, like he always did. Both taillights were fine. He opened his mouth to say something, then stopped himself. Arguing wouldn't help. Not now. Instead, he nodded, forcing his voice to stay calm. "I'll get it fixed, sir." Randall's grin widened, like he'd won something. "Oh, you'll do more than that. Step over here." He gestured toward the cruiser, his hand still resting on his holster. "I need to search you and the vehicle." Standard procedure. Marcus's stomach dropped. This was escalating, and fast. He glanced around, hoping for a passing car, a jogger, anyone who might see what was happening, but the street was empty. The last rays of sunlight had faded, leaving only the cold glow of streetlights and the cruiser's flashing reds and blues. He took a slow breath, his mind racing. He could comply, let Randall do whatever he wanted, and hope it ended there. Or he could push back, demand a reason, but that was a gamble he wasn't sure he could afford. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "can you tell me why you need to search me? I haven't done anything wrong." Randall's grin vanished, replaced by a hard, unyielding stare. "You questioning me, kid?" His voice was ice, each word clipped and deliberate. "I don't need a reason. I say step over here, you step. Or we can do this the hard way." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he kept them at his sides. The air felt electric now, like a storm was about to break. He'd heard stories like this, too many of them. Kids like him, stopped for nothing, searched for less, and sometimes worse. His mom's voice echoed in his head, "Stay calm, stay smart, stay alive." But staying calm was getting harder with every second Randall loomed over him, his authority a weapon he wielded without hesitation. Just then, a low rumble cut through the tension, a car approaching from the other end of Main Street. Marcus's eyes flicked toward it, a sleek silver SUV with tinted windows, slowing as it neared the scene. Randall noticed it too, his posture stiffening, though he didn't take his eyes off Marcus. The SUV pulled to a stop a few yards away, its engine idling. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 40s, her dark hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. She leaned out slightly, her voice calm but firm. "Everything okay here, officer?" she asked, her tone carrying a quiet authority that made Randall pause. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize her, but something about her presence shifted the air, like a tide turning. Randall straightened, his hand dropping from his holster as he turned to face her. "Ma'am, this is a routine traffic stop," he said, his voice smoother now, professional. "Nothing to worry about. You can move along." The woman didn't move. Her eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to Randall, and for a moment, a faint smile played at the corner of her lips. "Routine, huh?" she said, almost to herself. "Mind if I stick around? Just to make sure everything stays routine." Randall's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Marcus stood frozen, caught between the officer's glare and the stranger's steady gaze. He didn't know who she was or why she'd stopped, but her presence felt like a lifeline, fragile but real. The tension hung heavy, the cicada's hum now drowned out by the pulse in Marcus's ears. Something was about to give, he could feel it. The silver SUV's engine purred softly, its headlights casting a sharp glow across the gravel shoulder where Marcus stood. Officer Randall's posture had shifted, his broad shoulders tensing under the weight of the stranger's gaze. Marcus kept his hands loose at his sides, his eyes darting between the woman in the SUV and Randall, who now seemed caught off guard, like a man who'd stepped into a game he didn't fully understand. The air was thick with unspoken stakes, the kind that made Marcus's skin prickle. He didn't know who this woman was, but her calm, unflinching presence was enough to make Randall hesitate, and that was something Marcus hadn't expected. Randall forced a tight smile, his voice clipped but polite. "Ma'am, like I said, this is a routine stop. No need for you to get involved." He gestured toward Marcus, his tone hardening. "This kid's got a busted taillight, and I'm just making sure everything checks out." The woman raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint, skeptical smile. She leaned further out of the SUV's window, her dark eyes locking onto Randall's. "A taillight, huh? Funny, I passed by just now, and both lights looked fine to me." Her voice was smooth, almost conversational, but there was an edge to it, like a blade hidden in silk. She tilted her head toward Marcus. "You mind if I take a look, young man?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard. He didn't know what her angle was, but her tone wasn't patronizing, it was steady, like she was on his side. He nodded slowly. "Go ahead, ma'am." Randall's smile vanished. "That's not necessary," he snapped, stepping between Marcus and the SUV. "I've got this under control. You need to move along, or I'll have to." "Have to what?" the woman interrupted, her voice still calm but now carrying a weight that made Randall freeze. "Call for backup. Write me a ticket." "Go ahead, officer. I'm curious to see how this plays out." She reached into her purse, pulling out a phone, and began tapping the screen. "Or maybe I'll just record this. You know, for transparency. People love that these days." Marcus's pulse quickened. The situation was spiraling, and he wasn't sure if that was good or bad. He wanted to speak up, to de-escalate, but the woman's confidence held him in place. She wasn't backing down, and for the first time since Randall pulled him over, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wouldn't end the way he'd feared. Maybe someone was actually paying attention. Randall's face reddened, his hand twitching toward his radio, but he didn't call for backup. Instead, he turned back to Marcus, his voice low and venomous. "You think you're smart, kid? Getting some random lady to stick her nose in this? You're only making it worse for yourself." He jabbed a finger toward the sedan. "Open the trunk. Now." Marcus hesitated. The trunk was empty except for a spare tire and a gym bag, but he knew Randall wasn't looking for evidence, he was looking for control. Every instinct screamed at Marcus to resist, to demand a warrant, but he also knew that could turn this from bad to catastrophic. His mom's voice echoed again, "Stay smart. Stay alive." He took a step toward the car, his hand reaching for the keys in his pocket, when the woman's voice cut through the tension like a whip. "Hold on a second," she said, stepping out of the SUV. She was tall, dressed in a tailored blazer and slacks, her movements deliberate as she closed the door and walked toward them. The streetlights caught the glint of a silver watch on her wrist, and her presence seemed to fill the space, commanding attention without effort. "Before you start tearing into this young man's car, maybe you should explain why you're so interested in a routine taillight stop." She crossed her arms, her gaze piercing. Or is there something else going on here, Officer Randall? Randall flinched at the sound of his name. He hadn't introduced himself, and Marcus hadn't said it out loud. The realization hit Marcus like a jolt. She knew him, or at least knew enough to rattle him. Randall's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a growl. "Who the hell are you?" The woman smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that said she was 3 steps ahead. "Someone who doesn't like seeing kids harassed for no reason," she said. "And someone who knows a thing or two about how things work in Oak Ridge." She glanced at Marcus, her expression softening for a split second. "You okay, Marcus?" Marcus's breath caught. She knew his name too. He nodded, unsure what to say, his mind racing to piece together who she could be. A neighbor? A family friend? But before he could ask, Randall took a step toward her, his voice rising. "You're interfering with a police investigation, lady. I don't care who you think you are, you're about to regret this." The woman didn't flinch. She held up her phone, the screen glowing with a video feed, clearly recording. "Oh, I don't think I'll be the one regretting anything," she said. "But let's keep going. I want to see how far you're willing to take this." By now, a small crowd had started to gather. A jogger slowed to a stop across the street, pulling out his phone. A pickup truck pulled over, its driver craning his neck to watch. Marcus felt the weight of their eyes, the pressure building like a dam about to burst. Randall noticed too, his gaze flickering to the onlookers, his confidence wavering. He was used to operating in the shadows, where no one questioned him, but now the spotlight was on, and it was blinding. Marcus seized the moment. "Officer, if my taillight's the issue, let's check it," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Turn the car on, test the lights. If they're fine, I'm free to go, right?" Randall's jaw clenched, his eyes darting between Marcus, the woman, and the growing crowd. He was cornered, and he knew it. "Fine," he spat, gesturing toward the car. "Do it." Marcus moved to the driver's side, his hands steady as he turned the key in the ignition. The taillights flared red, both of them, bright and unmistakable. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Randall's face darkened. The woman chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Well, would you look at that," she said. "Guess it's not about the taillight after all." Randall opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the woman's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her smile widening. "Oh, this is about to get interesting," she said, almost to herself. She looked up at Randall, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You might want to check your radio, officer. I have a feeling you're about to get a call." Marcus's heart pounded. Something big was coming, he could feel it. The crowd was growing, phones were out, and Randall's authority was crumbling by the second. Whatever happened next, Marcus knew it would change everything. The air on Main Street felt like it was holding its breath, the tension so thick Marcus could almost taste it. The red and blue lights of Officer Randall's cruiser pulsed against the darkening sky, but their authority seemed to flicker now, dimmed by the growing crowd and the woman's unshakable presence. Marcus stood by his sedan, the keys still in his hand, the taillights glowing defiantly behind him. Both lights worked, everyone could see it, from the jogger across the street to the guy in the pickup truck, his phone held high, capturing every second. Randall's face was a storm cloud, his jaw so tight it looked like it might crack. The woman from the SUV stood a few feet away, her phone still in hand, that calm, knowing smile playing on her lips. She'd just told Randall to check his radio, and the way she said it, like she was holding a winning card, made Marcus's pulse race. Randall's hand hovered over his radio, his eyes locked on the woman. "You're bluffing," he growled, but there was a crack in his voice, a sliver of doubt that hadn't been there before. He didn't move to check the radio, not yet, like he was afraid of what he might hear. The crowd was buzzing now, a low hum of whispers and shuffled feet. Marcus caught snippets, "Taillights are fine, why is he still holding him?" And it fueled a spark of defiance in his chest. He wasn't alone anymore. People were watching, and Randall knew it. The woman tilted her head, her smile sharpening. Bluffing? Oh, I don't need to bluff, officer. She glanced at Marcus, her eyes softening for a split second, like a silent reassurance. Then she turned back to Randall, her voice steady and deliberate. You've got about 30 seconds before your sergeant calls. Maybe less. I'd answer if I were you. Randall's face flushed, a vein pulsing at his temple. He jabbed a finger at her. You don't get to tell me how to do my job, lady. You're obstructing justice, and I can have you arrested right now. She didn't flinch. Go ahead, she said, her tone almost daring him. Arrest me. Arrest him. Arrest everyone here. But you might want to think about who's going to be explaining this to the governor. The word hit like a thunderclap. Marcus's breath caught, and Randall froze, his hand dropping from his radio like it had burned him. The crowd went silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Governor? Marcus's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. He didn't know this woman, didn't know why she was here or how she knew his name, but that one word, governor, changed the game. Randall's eyes darted to Marcus, then back to the woman, his confidence unraveling like a cheap sweater. Before he could respond, the radio on Randall's shoulder crackled to life, a sharp burst of static cutting through the silence. Randall, this is Sergeant Holt. You copy? The voice was gruff, urgent, and it made Randall's face go pale. He fumbled for the radio, his fingers clumsy, and pressed the button. Yeah, I copy, he said, his voice tight. What's up? Stand down, Randall. Now. The sergeant's tone left no room for argument. Let the kid go. We've got a situation, and you're not making it better. Randall's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a man who just stepped off a cliff. Sir, it's just a routine. I said stand down. Holt barked, the radio crackling with his impatience. You're on Main Street with a crowd, and you're about to be on the evening news if you don't back off. Let him go. The crowd erupted in murmurs, phones raised higher, capturing Randall's stunned expression. Marcus stood rooted to the spot, his heart hammering. He didn't know what was happening, but he could feel the tide turning, the power shifting. The woman slipped her phone into her pocket, her smile now a quiet triumph. She stepped closer to Marcus, her voice low. You're doing great, Marcus. Just stay calm a little longer. Randall's hand fell from the radio, his shoulders slumping. He turned to Marcus, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and humiliation. This isn't over, kid, he muttered, but the threat felt hollow, like a dog barking from behind a fence. He took a step back, gesturing toward the sedan. Get in your car and go. Now. Marcus didn't move right away. He looked at the woman, searching her face for answers. She nodded, a small, encouraging gesture, and he slid back into the driver's seat, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the wheel. The crowd was still there, their phones still recording, and Randall's cruiser loomed in his rearview mirror. But something had shifted, something big, and Marcus could feel it in the air. As he started the engine, the woman leaned down to his window, her voice soft but clear. Drive safe, Marcus. And tell your dad I said hi. She straightened, her eyes flicking to Randall one last time before she walked back to her SUV. Marcus's mind reeled. Dad? His dad was just a lawyer, a quiet man who worked long hours and liked to fish on weekends. How did she know him? And what did the governor have to do with any of this? He pulled onto the road, his sedan rolling slowly past the crowd, their faces a blur of curiosity and outrage. In his rearview mirror, he saw Randall standing alone, his radio crackling again, his authority reduced to a flickering light in the dusk. The truth hit Marcus like a freight train as he turned onto his street. His dad wasn't just a lawyer, not anymore. The election last year, the late-night phone calls, the whispers about a big announcement. His dad had been appointed as an advisor to the governor, a position that came with influence, connections, and a name that carried weight. Marcus's heart pounded as he realized who he was in this moment, not just a kid from Oak Ridge, but the son of someone who could make people like Randall think twice. He parked in the driveway, the house dark except for the porch light his mom always left on. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Proud of you, Marcus. We'll talk soon. E." He stared at the screen, his mind still spinning. The woman. She wasn't just a stranger. She was someone who knew exactly who he was, and who his family was. And she just turned Randall's world upside down. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, the engine still ticking as it cooled in the driveway. The porch light cast a warm glow over the front yard, but his mind was miles away, replaying the scene on Main Street. His phone lay in his lap, the mysterious text from E glowing on the screen. "Proud of you, Marcus. We'll talk soon." His heart hadn't stopped racing since he'd pulled away from Officer Randall, the crowd, and that woman who seemed to know more about his life than he did. The weight of it all, the taillight lie, the radio call, the mention of the governor, pressed down on him like a storm cloud. He glanced at the house, knowing his mom would be inside, probably stirring a pot of stew or grading papers from her night class. His dad might be home too, hunched over his laptop, oblivious to the chaos Marcus had just walked through. Or maybe he wasn't oblivious. Maybe he was part of it. Marcus stepped out of the car, his sneakers soft on the pavement, and made his way to the front door. The air was cooler now, the cicadas quieter, as if the night itself was settling after the storm. Inside, the house smelled of garlic and thyme, and his mom's voice called from the kitchen. "Marcus? That you?" "Yeah, Mom," he called back, kicking off his shoes. He wanted to tell her everything, to spill the whole story, but something held him back. He needed answers first, and he had a feeling his dad was the key. He found his dad in the living room, a glass of iced tea sweating on the coffee table, his laptop open to a spreadsheet. David Hayes was a wiry man with graying temples and a quiet intensity that made people listen when he spoke. He looked up as Marcus entered, his eyes narrowing slightly, like he could sense something was off. "You're late," he said, his voice calm but probing. "Everything okay?" Marcus hesitated, then sat on the couch across from him, his phone still clutched in his hand. "Not really," he said, and the words came tumbling out, the stop, Randall's accusations, the taillights that weren't broken, the woman in the SUV, the radio call, the crowd. His dad listened, his face unreadable, but his hands folded tightly in his lap, a telltale sign he was processing every word. When Marcus finished, the room was silent for a moment, the only sound the faint clink of dishes from the kitchen. His dad leaned forward, his voice low. "You did the right thing, staying calm. I'm proud of you." He paused, his eyes searching Marcus's face. "And the woman, did she say her name?" Marcus shook his head. "Just a text. Signed E. She said to tell you hi." His dad's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. He stood, pacing to the window, then turned back to Marcus. "Elaine Carter," he said, almost to himself. "She's the governor's chief of staff. We've been working together on a few projects. She must have been passing through." Marcus's jaw dropped. The governor's chief of staff. That explained the confidence, the way she'd dismantled Randall without breaking a sweat. But it didn't explain why she'd stopped, why she'd known his name. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice steady but urgent, "what's going on? Why did she mention the governor? And why did Randall back off when he heard it?" His dad sighed, running a hand over his face. "I was going to tell you and your mom tonight. Things have been moving fast." He sat back down, meeting Marcus's gaze. "I've been offered a position as a special advisor to the governor. It's not public yet, but it comes with influence. People like Elaine know who I am. And who you are. Marcus leaned back, the pieces clicking into place. The late-night calls, the hushed conversations, the move to Oak Ridge, it wasn't just a fresh start. It was a step into something bigger. And tonight, that something had followed him onto Main Street. "Randall's going to face consequences," his dad continued, his voice firm. "Elaine's already sent me a message. The sergeant's launching an investigation, and there's video from the crowd. This won't slide." He reached out, resting a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "But more than that, Marcus, you stood your ground. You didn't let him break you. That's what matters." Marcus nodded, but the weight of it lingered. He'd walked away, but how many others didn't? How many kids like him faced the same stop, the same glare, without a crowd or an Elaine Carter to step in? The thought burned, fueling something deep inside him, a resolve to keep pushing, to never let fear silence him. His mom appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her eyes flicking between them. "Dinner's ready," she said, but her tone said she knew something was up. Marcus stood, promising himself he'd tell her everything after they ate. For now, he needed this moment, this quiet victory, to sink in. As he followed his parents to the kitchen, he thought about the crowd, the phones, the way Randall's power had crumbled under scrutiny. Justice wasn't guaranteed, it was fought for, demanded, recorded, shared. And tonight, he'd been part of that fight. He pulled out his phone, rereading Elaine's text, and typed a quick reply, "Thanks for stepping in. I'm ready to talk." The next morning, Oak Ridge buzzed with whispers. Randall was on desk duty, pending review. The video had gone viral, shared across platforms, sparking outrage and calls for reform. Marcus saw his name trending, not as a victim, but as a symbol of resilience. He wasn't just the governor's son, he was Marcus Hayes, and he'd faced down a storm and walked away stronger. You know, moments like this remind us that justice isn't just in courtrooms or headlines. It's in the choices we make, the stands we take, even when the odds feel stacked against us. Marcus could have stayed quiet, but he spoke up. He could have driven away, but he held his ground. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between staying silent or fighting back? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And if this story hit home, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Let's keep these conversations going, because change starts with us.